In really high-stakes situations, we're talking everything from defense contracting to the corporate boardroom, how you communicate can literally be the difference between a huge success and a billion-dollar failure. Today, we're going to dig into the hidden dangers of technical jargon and why sometimes the most complicated pitch is actually the one that's most likely to crash and burn.
All right, let's kick things off with a scenario that I'm sure feels familiar to a lot of you. Let's call it the PhD level pitch. This is that moment where all that technical brilliance doesn't really light the way. Instead, it just ends up creating a whole lot of confusion.
You can just picture it, can't you? The experts are all in the room, the pressure is on, and some supposedly groundbreaking solution is about to be shown off. The energy in there is this weird mix of, excitement and just straight up intimidation.
So the presentation starts and boom, right away, the room is just flooded with these really impressive sounding terms. They start talking about their solution and how it uses proprietary large language models, LLMs. And you see the clients, they're nodding along, just trying to hang on.
But it doesn't stop there, of course. The very next slide dives into the deployment of convolutional neural networks. This just adds another thick layer of deep technical stuff. You can almost feel the air in the room getting a little heavier, And then, for the grand finale, they start detailing the integration of vector databases. So by this point, the presentation is this absolute masterpiece of technical brilliance, but it's completely lost the audience. The decision makers are just left feeling overwhelmed and, let's be honest, pretty intimidated. So what we just walked through, that's a massive communication breakdown. And this critical failure, it actually has a name. We call it the lost in translation gap. Think of this gap as this huge chasm between what a technology can do in a lab and what a user understands it can do for them right now. And here's the really crucial part. As the tech gets more and more complex, this communication gap, it doesn't just get wider, it absolutely explodes. So when you're faced with that kind of overwhelming expertise, the client, they often make a really dangerous assumption. They start thinking something like, wow, this is so advanced. It has to be the right answer for us. And the second that assumption clicks into place, the most important part of the entire meeting just grinds to a halt. Because they're intimidated by all the jargon, the client stops asking the really tough, practical questions about how this shiny new tech is actually going to work in the real world. This failure to communicate, it leads to some pretty severe, very real consequences. It's the exact path that can turn a really promising AI project into what we call expensive shelfware.
See, because the right questions aren't being asked, all these critical details just get completely missed. Simple stuff like, will this new system even talk to our old tools? How much training does someone need to use this under pressure? What happens if it's foggy outside or the data feed isn't perfect? These are the practical things that just get glossed over.
And all of this leads to the most wasteful outcome you can imagine, shelfware. The organization buys this incredible AI marvel that checks every single box on the requirements list. But because it's way too complex to actually integrate and just too confusing for anyone to really trust, it ends up sitting on a shelf, totally useless to the very person it was supposed to help. But look, it doesn't have to be this way at all. The solution isn't to make the technology less complex. The solution is to make the explanation of it radically simpler. It's all about translating features into actual tangible outcomes. The key here is to distill the capability to the lowest level. And it's so important to get this. This does not mean dumbing it down. Not at all. It means you're respecting your audience's intelligence by translating what your tech is into what your tech does for them. It's a huge difference. Okay, let's look at a really clear example. A PhD-level pitch might say something like, we're leveraging a 70 billion parameter large language model with RAG, which, is technically accurate, but it means absolutely nothing to most people. So the distilled version? This tool reads 5,000 pages of reports in 30 seconds and gives you a one-paragraph summary. Now that is a game changer. It's clear, it's powerful, and it immediately answers the question, so what? Here's another one. A CNN model with 99.2% accuracy. That sounds pretty good, right? But what does it actually mean when things get messy? Well, the distilled version tells you it flags unauthorized vehicles even in fog or at night. That's a real capability, not just a number from a lab. And one last one, just to really drive it home. Instead of talking about some complex, multi-agent reinforcement learning framework, just focus on the outcome. We take a process that takes 6 hours and we turn it into 6 minutes.
That is a value proposition that anyone can understand and get really excited about.
So when you look at all these examples, they're really pointing to this fundamental shift that we need in how we talk about innovation.
You know, true innovation isn't really found in the complexity of the code. It's found in how it's used. It's about taking that incredibly advanced algorithm and turning it into something simple, something reliable, and something truly decisive in the hands of the person who actually needs it.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. In any field where the stakes are high, clarity isn't just a nice to have. It's not a matter of style. It is an absolute, non-negotiable, mission-critical requirement for success.
And that brings us to the end, but I want to leave you with a question to think about. Think about your own work, your own company. Where are the complex ideas failing to connect with the people making the decisions? Where is that lost in translation gap hiding in your world?